Let's bring in our panel of political commentators. Susan Smith is a Liberal commentator, Tim Powers is a Conservative commentator, and Karim Farouk is an NDP commentator. All three of you, welcome.
Thanks for having us, Martin.
Okay, let's start with a sales job. All three of you are in the business of communicating. Let's talk about vaccines and vaccine hesitancy, the changing messaging and the changing fortunes of the ASTRAZENECA vaccine. We've seen all sorts of problems with it in terms of people's perception. Today we saw Health Canada saying that they're going to put labels on the vaccine, even although all health authorities seem to suggest there's no proof of a connection with potential blood clots and all that, but it's now going to have a label bearing that possibility. Susan, how could the government, how could Health Canada, how can anyone how can they do a better job to try and sell this vaccine?
Yeah, this is tough, and I think it's up to the government. It's also up to the company itself. I mean, AstraZeneca isn't really helping itself a whole lot either. But I think we need to get role models out. The reality is the vaccine is safe. We need to get it into the arms of as many people as possible, and we need to do it as quickly as possible. So I think the government, if we could find a way in a nonpartisan manner to get every leader of the party or some of our premiers and so on to sit and take the AstraZeneca vaccine and agree not to scream that there's line jumping or anything else like that taking place, it may instill more confidence. At the same time, we also need to reach into the communities where there is vaccine hesitancy. There's an amazing program going on, for example, in the South Asian community in BC, in the Lower Mainland. We need to replicate those kinds of campaigns so that we're addressing the areas where there's concern.
Tim, any advice? I mean, it's been said that the AstraZeneca, the company, could be its own worst enemy. At the beginning of the week, we saw them not giving all the full data or different data to the United States authorities, and the United States authorities saying we haven't been given timely or proper data. Tim, any advice?
Well, we're all available to be hired, Martin. So that's the first bit of advice. Of course, they should do that. I just build on what Susan said. Look, get some social influencers, not just politicians, but others out there who are viewed to be more credible, fairly or unfairly, by the broad Canadian public. And look, this thing with labels, anybody who takes any kind of medication will see a warning label, a caution label on their medication. There's nothing new around all of that. So I'm not surprised by all of that. And yeah, look, Christine Elliott, I think, has gone out and getting an AstraZeneca shot. Others are doing it. Just example, more photos of people doing that, and lots of stories from those who've already done it, about how they're feeling fine. I think that will help this pass.
Okay, Karim, just briefly on this, I want to move to more partisan issues. Karim, any idea?
Yeah, usually on political stuff, I usually turn seldomly to my one-woman focus group, which is my mom, and she happens to be in that age group, 69-year-olds, and I'm happy to report she's going to be vaccinated in 10 days, and she's really happy about it. Doesn't know yet what vaccine she's going to get, but doesn't really matter to her. Okay. She's happy to, as soon as possible, go out and meet her friends that she hasn't seen in a year. So I'm agreeing with my two colleagues. I think on top of politicians giving, the photo op, I think just smiles of people coming out of vaccination center would go a long way to do ads on that. People are eager to go outside. They want to go and meet their families and their grandparents. I think those types of images will go a long way to incite people to go and get vaccinated.
Okay, and it also sounds as if your mother is repeating one of the messages, and that is any vaccine is a good vaccine. Okay, the Supreme Court ruling today. The federal carbon tax is constitutional. The legal dispute is over. So what are the consequences now on the political front? Where does a political battle over the carbon tax go from here? Susan?
Well, in a perfect world, it would stop, but the world isn't perfect. The Supreme Court has said, guess what? Carbon pricing is a problem across Canada. You can't put up walls between the provinces. There's carbon leakage, and we all need to do something. The federal plan is voluntary to the extent that provinces can decide what they put into place. And if they don't put something into place, there's a federal backstop. And there are rebates, there are dollars that go back into the pockets of the citizens of those provinces should their governments decide not to do anything. So I think the issue should be settled for once and for all, but I suspect Jason Kenney will never leave anything alone if he can take a poke at the federal government.
Okay, Tim Powers, I mean, for the federal Conservatives, this again reignites the issue of climate change, and Erin O'Toole's got this now back on his plate.
Yeah, he's got to pivot. I think so. And we're seeing some examples today of pivoting happen. Scott Moe in Saskatchewan talking about coming forward with a plan, expressing his frustration. I think Premier Kenney already has said something to that effect. Aaron O'Toole can do what he's doing and say he'll scrap the carbon tax for now, but he does have to have a pivot plan. And I think he's going to be forced now, Martin, to come forward sooner rather than later with a credible climate plan that he's talking about. But the court case gives him opportunity, gives the premiers opportunity to say, you know what, we fought as hard as we could. We went as far as we could. And we may take away the tax that's there now, but we have to deal with this issue. That's what I would do. Deal with this issue, say you fought as hard as you could, and find a way to pivot to success.
That's interesting. Karim, would you agree that this could actually be an opportunity for Aaron O'Toole, for whom many people have suggested this is not an easy issue, but he can now use the court ruling as a way of restarting the whole debate within his party faithful?
Yeah, absolutely. We saw that the last weekend he was lacking some arguments to definitely push his resolution over. Maybe the court ruling will have that additional argument to his base saying, listen, this is constitutional. Now, I did notice today, and not only today, but in the last few days, that Mr. O'Toole is saying that he will repeal Justin Trudeau's carbon tax and not the carbon tax. So I'm suspecting, as you mentioned on Monday, that he's going to present something as an alternative. And now it'll be for Canadians to decide if that's credible. Now, if that alternative plan is well received within the conservative base, I would suspect Canadians would say, well, that's not credible. And that's the paradox that Mr. O'Toole is facing. In order to be credible, he needs to anger his base on the environmental. And that's not an easy needle to thread.
Okay, I want to ask now a last topic in just 30 seconds from each of you, but what you're seeing, the Conservatives are intent on these motions where they are going to try to get senior Liberal staffers in front of parliamentary committees on both the issue of allegations of sexual impropriety from the Chief of Defence Staff as well as on the We Charity. We've just heard from Liberal House Leader Pablo Rodriguez that they are going to instruct those Liberal senior staffers not to appear. This is an attempt, one would think, to create a new narrative or to reinforce a narrative that the Conservatives feel is a positive one for them. Susan.
Well, the Conservatives are trying to change the topic, as Karim alluded to. Aaron O'Toole's had a really bad week. He was supposed to have a big conference or the big convention, and with momentum and leadership and his mark on the party, and he emerged with none of the above. He emerged as a weakened leader. So they're trying to do anything they can to change the topic from climate change and the 54% delegates rejecting the fact that climate change is real. And they're trying to and they knew the Supreme Court ruling was going to come down today, and it was probably going to be in favor of the government. So trying to drag staffers to committee is cheap partisan politics. I'll say the Liberals tried to do it 10 years ago, and the Conservatives fought against it. Pierre Poilievre and John Baird fought against it. So staffers, ministers should go. Deputy ministers should go. Political staffers don't need to go. They're not elected. Okay,
Tim, does this indicate, though, a real intensity in terms of the possibility of an imminent election, and Tories know that this could be a front on which they could maybe gain some political points?
Well, certainly they're playing the election game here, as Susan alluded to. It's a practice that's been brought forward before. They're trying to remind the Canadian public that there are some things there they ought to ask questions about. They're trying to challenge the ethics and the approach of the Liberal government. It's a typical opposition strategy. The other thing it may do, because as Susan rightly pointed out, O'Toole's had some challenges in the last week or so, might motivate some Conservatives. So it has dual purposes, Martin. Okay,
Karim, last word to you on this. Certainly the NDP has also been interested in pursuing the matter of the We Charity especially.
Yeah, I mean, it has happened before. I remember the Chief of Staff, the Prime Minister testifying. I remember Daniel Jean, the former National Security Advisor, testifying. So staff have testified in front of the committee. So I'm not sure what the Liberal are going with that. Maybe the scope of it is a bit too large to them. But if I'm the Conservative too, not that I don't want to know answers to a lot of questions that have happened during this pandemic, but you have to be knowledgeable about overreaching. You don't want to give ammunitions to the Liberal government, who's already eager to go into an election. So I would tame that, but we have to get to the bottom of those issues. That's certainly true.
Okay, all three of you, I want to thank you very much, and we'll check in with you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.